Hi Year 11, so in this video I'm going to be talking through English Language Paper 2. So, first thing you need to make sure that you do when you get into the exam is you need to annotate your extracts. Read through both of them. To get a good chance of getting into your level 3 and above, so being clear, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you understand the extracts. So therefore, reading them as a whole first is the best thing that you can do. If you are to read through them and you don't annotate them, then that means when you come back to answering the questions, this is what you're faced with, a blank sheet. That is far harder for you to then try and understand and to pick out your evidence, because essentially you're going to find that you're going to be reading it all again, and so therefore you're doing the same thing again. It's a waste of your time. You need to make sure that you are annotating the extract. Now, I know a lot of students do this, where they are just highlighting quotes. At this moment in time, that's quite random. It's not really telling you anything. Yes, it's got the quotes, but it's not telling you how to direct your focus. Whereas if you actually have annotations down the side, which is what you've been told to do, that then means that you've got less to read. You don't have to read through the whole extract all over again, because you've got your annotations that can direct the focus depending on what the question is asking you to do. So you do that for your source A and your source B. And I'm not saying that you necessarily need to have an annotation next to every single paragraph, just when there is something of significance happening, or there's a kind of a key idea that has come out, a summary, what is happening in that paragraph there. And that's the best thing that you can do for yourselves in the exam to begin with. So that should take you about 10 minutes to do to begin with. Then you want to go on to your question 1. So remember, question 1 is your multiple choice question. They will ask you to look at a particular source. They will give you the lines that they want you to look at, and then most importantly, they'll give you a focus, whether they want you to look for things that are true or false. So you read through the statements and then you decide which of those are true or false depending on the focus of the question. Now, if I were you, because I don't want to be making, colouring these in and then thinking, actually, no, I've changed my mind, is I would be going through each statement and thinking, right, okay, I think that one might be right, I think that one might be right, and that one, and that one, and that one. Okay, at this moment in time, I've got 5. I need to get 4. So I'll check those 5 again, and then I can shade in the circle of the ones that then, yeah, I'm absolutely confident they're the right ones. Remember, in these statements, there may well be words or phrases that appear in the extract. So, for example, we've got this one here, 500 metres away. You might think, actually, I've seen 500 metres, therefore that must be the right answer. 500 metres is said in the extract. Just make sure you check what is said around that word or phrase that is also in the extract. Same as in the extract. Look at the context that it sits in, because it may well be that it's written differently from what is actually in the extract. So you want to make sure you check that. And remember, once you get to a grade 4, 5 marks is the difference of a grade. So we don't want to be losing out on marks here on question 1. Okay, so you want to be spending about 5 minutes on that. So at this point, we're 15 minutes into the exam. Then we get to question 2. Now remember, with question 2, it is 8 marks. So we cannot afford really to spend longer than 10 minutes on this question. Okay, and the focus of this is about what can you infer, your inference. So I don't need any zooming in on words and phrases and explaining what a metaphor is or what the personification suggests. I don't need any of that. What I do need you to make sure that you do is that in your first sentence, because this is a mistake that has happened in your mocks previously, is we've not actually answered the question. Okay, so you need to make sure that in your first sentence, you must, really underline that because I really am emphasising that, include a key word or phrase from the question. You are then going to put in 1 to 2 quotes that connect to the idea that you're saying there. Okay, and then the third thing you need to do is your inference, and it is your inference that is going to build your marks up. Okay, so with level 2, so that gets you between 3 and 4 marks. That might just get you a grade 4. Okay, you're going to have 1 times inference. Okay, and that is going to start with this gives the impression. Okay, level 3, you're going to make sure you've got 2 pieces of inference in there. So as well as doing the this gives the impression, you're then going to also include the word because. So this gives the impression da, 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 because da, 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 da. And then you've got your 2 pieces of inference. To get into level 4, we're looking for those 3 pieces of inferences on those 1 or 2 quotes that you've put in. So the phrasing you could use for that is perhaps suggesting. And then you've got your 3 pieces of inference. So this gives the impression, blah, 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 because, blah, 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 perhaps suggesting, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got your 3 pieces of inference. When you then go on to do the same for source B, if it's a similarity, we want likewise. If it's a difference, you want however. And then you're going to repeat this for source B. Okay? And I don't want anyone coming out of that exam telling me that they've written 4 paragraphs for question 2. It's not needed. Remember, with language, once you hit the level, that's it, you've hit it. So once you've put your quotes in, once you've got your inference, that's it, you've hit it. Okay, I don't need that on repeat for 4 paragraphs. Get your inference in there for source A, source B, and then get moving on to question 3, 4 and 5. So at this point, when we move on to question 3, we should be about 25 minutes in. Okay, 10 minutes on reading the extract, 5 minutes on question 1, 10 minutes on question 2. We should roughly be about 25 minutes in. Now, question 3 is worth 12 marks. It is the exact same as paper 1, question 2. This is a question that you are so familiar with and are really experts on. You've done this over and over and over, and it's the exact same style. How does the writer use language to describe? And then this is the bit that changes. The exact same as paper 1, question 2. They will tell you which source. They will tell you which lines to get your quotes from as well. Make sure you stick to this, please. Number 1, it's because they've chosen those lines because that's where the best quotes are. So don't try and get quotes from elsewhere. Number 2, if we only get quotes from elsewhere, we're just not going to get to the top of the level that we should be in. Okay? Really simple instruction. Make sure that you follow that. So we are looking for 2 to 3 quotes that connect to a big idea. Now, in relation to identifying what a big idea is, I would be thinking about what knowledge have you got already from kind of outside this extract. And this is where really your understanding of themes within literature can really help you to create a big idea. So think about things like imbalance of power, that humans are subservient to nature, responsibility. No, this is nothing new to you. You've covered all of those in your literature themes. And I'm not saying that that's it, 100% these literature themes can be used, but just to help you while you're in there, just think, are any of them relevant? Then what you need to make sure that you do is once you've got your big idea, that you're going to be analysing the methods. And to add detail to our response, we're going to do our furthermore and make sure we've got at least analysis of a second quote in there. So we need to make sure that we analyse those methods as well. Okay? Now in relation to your methods, because it is the analysis of methods that's going to help you move through the levels, things you want to be thinking about are symbolism, a semantic field of, that might be power, it might be weakness, it might be vulnerability, okay? You need to name what the semantic field is of. Metaphor, personification, and then because it's paper 2, hyperbole as well, that exaggeration, that's more likely to be in there with paper 2 because of the kind of the purpose and the nature of the text that you're reading. Now, when you've identified the methods within those and you've explained the effect of them, you can also be zooming in on your words and phrases. Okay? Now, when you're talking about the effect, and I'm putting this in capital letters because it is so important. With language, once you've met the criteria, that's it, you've met it. So once you've put in a method, so say for example you've said something is personification, that's it. The examiner has dragged that kind of annotation across. They've identified that you've met that part of the success criteria. That's it. You're with your quote, naming a method, you're getting into the bottom of level 2. Okay? Once you've done that, that's it, you've done it. They're not going to keep rewarding you for naming methods. What they are going to reward you for is your effect. Okay? So that's when you're going to be using words to signpost to the examiner, you are talking about the effect. If you use these words, they cannot deny that you are talking about the effect. So we've got things like creates, intensifies, heightens, exaggerates, accentuates, accelerates. Okay, they signal really clearly you're talking about the effect. And the last thing I will say on this, because we're obviously building towards detail, is a word like because. You cannot kind of be dismissive of a word like because. It really, again, signals to the examiner that you are being clear on what you're saying. This creates the idea that blah, 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 because. That is your gateway into your level 3 and above, because you're justifying your analysis and what you're saying. It shows that you clearly understand it. Okay, so that's your question 3, and you're going to spend about 15 minutes on that. Okay, so at this point, I'll add that on there, 15 minutes, so 30, we're about 40 minutes in now. So we're 40 minutes into our exam, which leaves us 20 minutes for question 4. That is absolutely perfect timing. Okay, and you have got to be so disciplined with your timing. That's really important. Okay, so question 4, it is 16 marks. Sorry, I should have written 20 minutes there, and actually we're up to 40 minutes here, aren't we? That's how long we've spent on it so far, giving us 20 minutes to answer this question. So it's asked us to look at the whole of source A and the whole of source B, and I will come back to that. Now, in this question here, it says, compare how the writers convey their similar thoughts and feelings about nature. So the how and the convey, that is basically your analysis of methods. Now, you are competing with everyone else in this country, and I'm not being dramatic there, you actually are. Grade boundaries won't be decided until everyone in the country has had their papers marked, and then they will determine exactly what the grade boundaries are going to be. I guarantee you, on this question, the part of it that other people will forget about is the analysis of methods. Don't let that be you. It is really important that we analyse methods in this question. If not, we're going to be limited as to how high up the mark scheme we can go. So let others in the country forget about the analysis of methods. Don't let that be you. And analysis of methods, you are really good at this because you've also just done it for your question 3, just there. Okay, same thing, analyse the methods. I want the same for question 4, please. Analyse the methods in this question as well. Now, when it's talking about the feelings, okay, and to make sure that we're covering the idea of the whole source and feelings, I'm going to do a little diagram now. We've got our source A, we've got our source B. What I would like you to do is roughly think about them in the 2 halves. I'm talking very rough here. Okay, if it's a little bit beyond or whatever, it doesn't matter, but just roughly looking at it like that. So what is their feeling in the first half, and why do they have that feeling? What is their feeling in the second half, roughly at one point, and why? You don't have to cover that whole half, it could just be a section. But if you cover a section from the first half of the source and the second half of the source, we've covered the whole source. Same then for source B. What is the feeling? Why do they have that feeling? What is the feeling? Why do they have that feeling? And by doing that, you've then been able to identify a shift. Now that shift might only be quite subtle, and that might be quite hard to find. If you can find it, brilliant. And if you can't, Don't worry, okay? Just make sure you're talking about the feeling, analyse the methods and why they feel that way. Now, the structure of your response here is, if we're talking about source A, we're going to go initially. We're going to identify in that first sentence, what is their feeling in relation to the question. Then we're going to analyse methods. Don't forget that bit. Remember, there will be other people around the country that do. Don't be that person. Then we're going to go, however, they also kind of feel this way. Don't forget to analyse your methods. And then you're going to be thinking, well, why? Why is there a shift? What is the reason? There's something that's gone on in the extract, some information we've got, something that's happened, or we're told about, or we know about, that means there is a reason for a slight shift in their feeling. The shift isn't necessarily going to be from happy to sad. It may be something far more subtle than that. Have a look to see if you can find it. If you can't, the main thing is, what are they feeling? Analyse the methods. That's your priority on this. What are they feeling? Analyse the methods. And then you do the same for source B. I'm going to give you slightly different sentence starters here. However, if you want to stick with the same ones as you did for source A, that's absolutely fine. You're not going to get kind of marked down for that. I'm just giving you options because I know some of you might want that. And then, despite this, and that's your shift, and you comment on the feeling. Analyse the methods, don't forget about those. And then, why is there a shift? Okay, and that's what you're going to do in 20 minutes. So you're going to spend about 10 minutes on each source. Okay, that then gives us 45 minutes for our question 5. That's perfect timing. It's 40 marks. It is 50% of the paper. So we're going to spend 45 minutes on it. Now, often they do give you quite a wordy statement, and the reason why they do that is because they're not expecting you to touch on absolutely everything in it, but what they are expecting from you is to be able to kind of engage with a part of it and put forward an argument based on that. Now, no matter what, we are always going to start with our anecdote. Okay, that is always going to be our paragraph 1, and in that I really want you to think about using emotive language to create sympathy for your view, and using hyperbole, that exaggeration. Don't necessarily exaggerate the story in terms of what happens in it, but exaggerate the feeling it made you experience, because that's what's going to get the sympathy from your audience, and that's what's going to really engage the examiner. And don't forget, I want you to have a voice here. I want your personality to come through. So think about maybe using sarcasm, humour. You aren't boring students. You aren't boring at all. You have got personality, and I want that to come through in your writing. So 2, 3, 4, I will come back to those. 5 is always going to be your mental health and physical well-being, because I don't think there's ever going to be a question that doesn't cover those things. And paragraph 6, you're going to base it on morality. So basically, what is the morally right thing to do in relation to the statement, and you arguing your opinion. Now, whatever opinion you choose, whether that's agree or disagree, you stick with that opinion. You don't switch. You don't do a bit agree and disagree. We are just agreeing or just disagreeing. If you want to put forward a kind of, oh, some people say this, however, like a counter argument and basically justifying why that person's wrong, that's okay. But I don't want an entire paragraph on agree and then an entire paragraph on disagree. That's not what I'm looking for here. Then our other paragraphs here, you've got choices. Think about what you're going to base that paragraph on, just so that you've got a real kind of clear concept and a justifiable reason for that argument. If not, you're just having one big rant, and an examiner's not going to like that. So we're thinking about class, mini, the environment, education, technology, age, gender, setting, so maybe like the location of something, what else have we got there? Written age, education, yep. So you then choose 3 of those that will be your paragraphs here. Okay, and then you've got a different focus. If not, you're just going to repeat yourselves and you're just going to be saying the same thing over and over and over again. What was great is that from paper 1, a lot of you said that you did a plan. Love that. You must have a plan. Make sure there's a real clear sequence and structure to your ideas. Examiners are going to really kind of judge you on whether you've got a plan, and if they see that you've got a plan, you're more likely to get into that kind of level 3 and above, because they can see that you've got an order to your ideas. Remember the key things here. You've got then, each one of these is a paragraph. I do not want anyone coming out saying they've written, 8-9 pages. It is 2 to 3 pages maximum. If you keep writing and writing and writing, that is when you're going to make mistakes, and we can't afford to have those mistakes in there that actually you probably wouldn't have done if you'd only written 2 to 3 pages. Don't forget various sentence types. Use paragraphs. Think about your vocabulary and trying to use ambitious vocabulary where possible. And then also, don't forget about your punctuation. Trying to get a semicolon in there. And some of you are going to want to be thinking about colons, dashes around your embedded clause, brackets around your embedded clause as well. Follow the slow writing checklist that I will also upload with this. Practice using a semicolon. Practice using dashes around your embedded clauses. It's really important. The more you practice, the more it becomes habit, the more likely you will be to get it right. And that's what we're aiming for here. That will then increase our mark for technical accuracy. And as I've said, I can't reiterate enough, it is far more important that you write fewer pages, but you check. Use your time to edit your work. Read back through it. Have a look. Is there a sentence or a chunk where you're using the at the beginning of the sentence over and over again? And actually you could put an embedded clause there, or you could start the sentence with a subordinate clause or a fronted adverbial. Okay, so your time is also for editing. It's not just to continually write and write and write. And really think about everything that you're doing. Ensure there's real intent with everything that you're doing, and you will absolutely smash this. So just remember, practice, 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 create good habits, and you will be brilliant in the exam.